So now, in the world of atheism, a lot of people tend to think that science leads to atheism, and science is the root of atheism, which is actually very false, and it's actually not true at all, because atheism, in a nutshell, is believing that there is no God.
Oh, so it's a straw man you want to contend with, is it? Okay, I'll be happy to oblige.
That's the belief in a nutshell. Now, science can't comment on God because science does not go outside of the natural realm of nature. It can't comment on metaphysical things and supernatural things such as God, such as jinns, such as the world of anything supernatural.
So far, this is decently accurate. Only I would change your use of cannot to does not.
Like, if I was to right now start floating in the middle of this room, science couldn't comment on that because that's metaphysical. It's not in our world of nature, it's supernatural. So science can't comment on something such as God.
Okay, now you're starting to get away from reality here. Science can certainly investigate to see if there is a natural explanation to the things you call supernatural, such as your floating example. In fact, simply accepting it as supernatural is premature considering no investigation has taken place in your example.
So the fact that some people think that atheism is a result of science is actually very flawed, and it's false, because science can't comment on things like God because God is metaphysical.
Science can comment on the things you attribute to God, and by discovering the natural explanations for them, discount your God claims. The sunset and sunrise were once considered metaphysical. It is now explained as a natural phenomenon resulting from the Earth's rotation. Your argument is starting to become ever increasingly flawed.
God is not in front of us. Science can only comment on things that we have observed. For example, 500 years ago, science could not have commented on our brain or our reproductive system or our biology. But now it can, because we have learned about these things through science and we have empirically viewed them. So science can only comment on things that have been observed. Now I want to explain to you guys something, and that is properly basic belief.
Oh, great. It is reasonable to believe certain things without evidence. What is unreasonable is to expect claims of the supernatural to fall under such things like what time you got up or what you had for a meal.
Properly basic belief is something that needs no evidence, something that is just plain obvious, something that, for example, the world is real. I mean, the fact that you could be thinking about whether the world is real shows that you're in the world thinking about whether the world is real, therefore the world is real.
I am thinking about Selma Hayek coming to my house today and offering to cook me breakfast tomorrow morning. So therefore she'll really do that. Are you seeing the flaw in that line of reasoning yet? The ability to imagine things that are not real and therefore think about them is what drives literature, movies, TV, and so on. I would even dare say it is what drives religion.
So the world being real is a properly basic belief. In the same way, God, believing in God, is a properly basic belief.
No, it's not, because by your explanation that we can see the world and think about the world, God cannot be real because he only qualifies for one of those.
If you look at the Quran and the way that the Quran addresses God and the existence of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't go too deep into proving that he exists because it's a properly basic belief, it's logical. Rather, Allah goes into whether you should worship him or not. Allah encourages you to worship him in the Quran. Ya ayyuhan nas ubudu rabbi wa rabbakum. Isa alayhi salam says in the Quran, that's a quotation of Isa alayhi salam in the Quran. O you people, worship my Lord and your Lord. So in this verse we come to realize that Isa alayhi salam doesn't go to the people and try and prove that God exists.
Of course it doesn't try to prove God exists because it can't. It simply makes the claim and through use of intimidation and promises of immortality and other rewards convinces gullible people to believe it. This usually starts in childhood, where the children of religious people make the false assumption that people are not attempting to deceive them. And this belief is drilled into them consistently until lack of belief in unproven claims of the supernatural seems to be the odd thing. It is reminiscent of Stockholm Syndrome.
They know that God exists. Rather, he pushes them towards worshipping God and worshipping him in his oneness. Ya ayyuhan nasu dhkuru ni'matallahi alaykum. O people, remember the favor of Allah upon you. So in these Quranic verses, Allah doesn't push you towards, proving his existence because it's a properly basic belief. It's something that's just there.
No, the Quran just pushes you into worshipping this unproven claim of Allah by, as I said, intimidation, unverifiable promises of reward, and compulsory childhood indoctrination. Not to mention, once one accepts such beliefs, to later decide that they are nonsensical and desire to leave the Muslim religion is punishable by death. So intimidated to believe and threatened into staying. Yeah, great way to live.
It's like questioning whether we're living in a real world.
No, it's like questioning if Yahweh, Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Hera, Odin, Thor, or any other god claims are true or not. It's called thinking critically about the context and composition of the claims, which, if done right, invariably lead to skepticism that demand more. And once that demand is consistently unmet, it should lead a thinking person to say your claims are most likely false, and therefore I see no reason to believe them until you are able to provide that proof that you have already refused to provide.
So Allah doesn't aim towards proving that He exists because it's obvious. It's something that's just there.
If it was obvious, we would all believe it, but seeing more people do not believe than do believe in Allah, I would wager on it not being as obvious as you think it is.
Alan Plantings, in his book Is Belief in God Properly Basic, argues that you don't need to prove the existence of God in order to believe in Him because it is properly basic.
See, there is another flaw in your argument. You do not have to be able to prove His existence to believe in Him. This is nonsensical. Demand for proof comes from those hearing the claim, not those making the claim. If you make the claim, whether or not you have proof is irrelevant to your belief or lack of belief of the claim. In fact, making a claim that you do not believe to be true is called deception.
Just like our world that we are living in is real, that's a properly basic belief. So Alan Plantings in his book argues that you don't need to prove God's existence because it's properly basic. Olivera Petrovich, in her book Key Psychological Studies in the Issues of Religion, she expresses to us that there is more empirical foundation to believe in God than they can be inferred from the religious text. So this basically means that empirically it is more logical to believe in God rather than believing from inferred religious texts. For example, the Quran or the Bible. So she's basically saying that empirically there's more of a reason for you to believe in God, putting aside the religious text.
More empirical foundation for belief in God? Really? I would call that empirical foundation ignorance. All it takes to make someone believe in any God is your religious text and their complete ignorance of certain realities. This is why religions prey on the young, and I most certainly do mean prey in its most heinous definitions. If you allow a group of children to grow to adulthood without exposure to anyone's God claims, teaching them the realities of the natural world, I doubt you'd have very many of those children willing to believe in your God without that proof that you refuse to provide in your video titled Proving God's Existence.
So from that we can extract that it is more logical for you to believe in God when you are born rather than believing in no God when you are born.
No, from that I extract that it is more logical to try to convince the young and easily deceived that God is real while they remain ignorant of scientific explanations of the things you attribute to God. At least you're willing to admit that it does take an infantile mind to believe such claims, though.
So let's say that there's a girl born on this country, island nearby, and she is by herself there, her parents have died, and she's living and she grows up. It is more logical for her to question, why am I here? Who created me? Than her to say, oh, no one created me, I just got here by myself.
No, it is more logical for her to ask how she got there and attempt to find answers using the natural world than to simply apply superficial and pointless meaning to the fact that she is there. Another logical and reasonable course of action would be to attempt to find more islands to see if she is the only one around. The illogical thing to do is to create answers from ignorance and claim they are truth. I also find it very telling that this woman in your example must be separated from sources of learning and therefore remain ignorant to come up with a God claim.
Obviously, it's more logical that she's going to question who put me here. It's like being on a train journey and not questioning where your train journey is going, or who put you on that train, or how did you get on the train.
And of course it is more logical to assume natural causes for all of that too, and attempt to find those natural causes. If I woke up on a train tomorrow morning with no memory of how I got there, I would not just kick back and enjoy the ride after assuming God did it. I would get up and ask questions of other people on the train. Did they see me get on? Was I placed there by other people? And so on. You assume supernatural explanations, foregoing investigation, while I investigate to find the truth.
Now comes the fitra. As Muslims, we believe in something called the fitra. Fitra is your innate disposition. It's what you are, inside you're inclined towards. And there are three things as Muslims that we know that naturally human beings are inclined towards. And they are...
Oh, this ought to be good.
Monotheism, justice, and compassion.
Well, at least you're willing to cite that these natural inclinations are simply Muslim beliefs, meaning they have no real basis in human psychology. So I'll go ahead and file them under the same claim of natural human inclination toward poetry made by the Poetry Foundation. Take out monotheism and you do begin to break the seal of real natural human inclinations, which is a much longer list. But these things also interact with one's circumstance of being, such as gender and gender identity, age, talent, intelligence, temperament, and character and personality, as well as the external world around us, and are consequently shaped into a great many varieties and degrees. Not everyone's ideas of justice and compassion are the same. For example, the Muslims call death for apostasy justice. Most other religions and people in general do not. Some Christian sects call excommunication for apostasy or blasphemy justice. Some characterize compassion as action taken as a result of empathy. So others would simply call it unconditional love.
So these are three things that we are, kind of driven towards through our fitrah. And this explains a lot. I mean, this explains why some of us, when we see something bad happening in front of us, even if we're atheists, we're driven towards, helping that person out. This is justice, compassion. This is monotheism.
It is not monotheism. Monotheism is the belief in a single God or the oneness of a God. One could believe in a God that dictates murder, oppression of women, death to infidels, genocide, marriage by rape, child abuse, and slavery. And these actions are characteristically contradictory to justice and compassion. Oh wait, doesn't some of that describe the Muslim and Christian religious dogmas?
Now let's go back to the point where if someone was born on a country island somewhere and they grew up and they started believing in God, that is fitrah. Because they have their fitrah, their innate disposition in them, they will automatically start to believe in God. And not just God, monotheistic God. They will start to believe that there is only one God. Because it's logical. I mean, how many gods can you have?
Oh, I don't know. Just in our modern world, there are about 4,200 different religions, so I would say that right now there are at least 4,200 different gods being worshipped. There have been an estimated 63,000 different religions to exist, which means at least 63,000 different gods. And this is made inaccurate by the fact that most religions that have existed were polytheistic, and even some of today's practiced religions are polytheistic. That is a whole lot of people who are just as sure of the existence of their God or gods as you are of yours.
If there's more than one will, having a will on something, that is going to be crazy. Everything's going to be growing crazy. It's like having a shop and there's 5 managers. One manager says cook this food. Another manager says paint the ceiling red. The other manager says no, paint it yellow. There's going to be chaos in that restaurant, in that shop. There's going to be chaos. So in the same way, if there was 5 wills willing stuff upon our world, there would be chaos and destruction going on, as the Quran states clearly.
Which would actually make more sense considering the state of not only the natural world, with all the natural disasters, but also the state of human affairs wherein we have chaos and destruction on a daily basis. Are you sure you're still arguing for Allah? Because you just described the situation if there were to be more than a single God, and that description more accurately fits with the reality of the world.
So it is only logical to believe that there is only one creator. And that is the argument for proving God's existence through nature and through the fitrah.
Now wait a minute, you said at the beginning of this video that you were not supposed to prove God exists. Now you just claimed all that gibberish was proof through nature, which it wasn't. It was just a bunch of circular reasoning and hypotheticals.
So brothers and sisters, I quickly want to address something before I end this video off. And it is about all of you atheist viewers out there who might be watching the video currently.
Okay, you have my undivided attention. What do you have to say?
And I want to quickly touch upon something. In the past, I've done videos related to atheism, and a lot of you guys have gone really crazy in the comments, and you haven't, responded to, some of you haven't responded to my contentions. Rather, you've just gone on an abusive side and you've started abusing. Now, with all due respect, respectfully, if you want to respond to my points, respond to them academically. Don't come and respond and say, oh, you look like this, or you're this, and you're that, you Muslim. Don't come and say stuff like that. If you want to respond to my points, respond academically. And that's all I want to say. And if you're responding emotionally, which a lot of atheists do, I mean, how are you proving anything if you're responding emotionally? If you want to prove something, respond academically and through using your rationale. And obviously a lot of you guys haven't been using your rationale if you believe that no God exists, because that's not logical.
Well, if you want us to be polite, you might not want to end that request with an insult to our cognitive abilities. Because that makes you look like a dick.
It's more logical to believe that God exists rather than believing that we came here out of nothing and we're here and we're just living here for no reason. Thanks for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. So do you really believe that we came out of nothing?
No, I believe I came out of my mother. But if you're talking about the origins of life, I have no belief on the matter and freely admit that I do not know how life started. However, what I refuse to do, and pay attention to this part, is believe ancient explanations born from ignorance.
Even Professor Krauss himself, the donut, believes that nothing is something. So atheists, you flopped!
Wait, did you just call Professor Krauss a donut? What the hell does that mean? Anyway, I'll have to disagree with you on your flop conclusion, as I think I have appropriately demonstrated the flaws of your reasoning.
Finish him!
As an atheist, I am reliant upon a few things being present within the context and content of a claim. One of those things is evidence. Another includes a lack of contradiction, which you clearly did not show in this video. First, you said you didn't have to prove God, then set about trying to do just that. Then you claim Muslims believe in justice and compassion, which is contradicted by Sharia law as I would define justice and compassion. You also failed to provide any real evidence, and as I have said, only argued with circular reasoning and hypotheticals. If you really want to have even the slightest chance of showing your beliefs to be grounded in reality, you might not want to follow the failed model of the presuppositional argument.